continents and our oceans, which will be on the first test. And that first test is going to be next Wednesday. Okay, this is your first history test. All right.
North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa.
This is Africa, guys. This is
Asia, Australia, Antarctica.
All right, let's try again. Make sure we get no mistakes this time.
Australia, Antarctica, Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, North America.
All right, very good. Some of you are not looking. Eyes up here. All right, now let's do the oceans. Okay, Atlantic. Everybody say that clearly.
Atlantic
Ocean.
Pacific Ocean, Arctic Ocean, Arctic Ocean, Southern Ocean, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean.
Very, very good. All right, now let's do the regions of the U.S. All right, we've been having trouble with this. Let's see if we can get it right this time. All right.
Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, Southwest, West.
Oh, perfect. Very good. All right, now let's begin on page 50, and we're going to finish reading about Squanto today. All right, and then we are going to have a quiz next Tuesday and the test next Wednesday. All right, on page 50, we're going to start learning about the things that Squanto taught the Pilgrims, and we're also learning another reason why he stayed with them. Squanto begins to teach the Pilgrims. Squanto quickly noticed that the Pilgrims were very thin, yet they did not eat fish. Why do you not eat fish, he asked. We have no hooks or nets to catch them, they answered. Come with me, Squanto said. I will teach you how to make nets from the tall grass. Excitement began to spread through the colony as the Pilgrims saw men catching fish with their grass nets. That night, they sat down with Squanto to a delicious fish dinner. One day, Squanto and his friends took some Pilgrims into the woods. The Native Americans made small cuts in the maple trees, then hung homemade wooden buckets under the holes. To the Pilgrims' surprise, sweet, sticky liquid began to drip from the trees into the buckets. When the buckets were full, they showed the Pilgrims how to boil the liquid over a fire. Taste, Squanto said. Said the Pilgrims. It almost tastes like the sugar we used to buy in England. And so the Pilgrims learned how to make maple syrup and maple sugar. How they had missed the sugar they could buy in England. Now they could use maple sugar to sweeten their food. As big as a mouse's ear. One day in early spring, Squanto announced, look, the oak leaves are as big as a mouse's ear. It is time to plant corn. The Pilgrim children standing nearby must have giggled to themselves. A mouse's ear? They watched as Squanto went to the stream with his nets. Now that's weird, isn't it? He said it's time to plant corn and he goes to the stream with his nets.
Oh, I know what he's doing.
When Squanto got to the stream, he tossed out his net and pulled it in again, filled with small fish. He did this again and again. The children gave each other a puzzled look. I thought he said it was time to plant corn, said one of the girls, but she watched to see what would happen next. Squanto was always full of surprises. After Squanto finished fishing, he went back to the field and made a small hole in the ground. Plop, plop, plop. Squanto dropped 3 small fish into the hole he had just made. Then he set a kernel of corn and a few bean seeds in the hole. Next, he filled in the hole and made a small mound or hill on top. He made a quick step to the side and made another hole. By now, the children's eyes were wide with wonder. Squanto smiled at the children around him. The fish helped the plants to grow strong and healthy, he said. Soon everyone joined in to help. Several children dug small holes with their hands or set the seeds into the holes, while a few brave ones dropped the fish in. Later, Squanto taught the Pilgrim men to plant squash and pumpkin seeds. The Pilgrims traded some of the things they had for the seeds they needed from the Native Americans. All right, what would we call the fish today? We don't actually stick fish in with the seeds, but what do we put with our seeds? You know what it's called?
Fertilizer.
Fertilizer, very good. So the fish were like fertilizer. So top of the next page, 52. still new things to learn. As spring changed to summer, there were many things to do and learn. There were plenty of turkeys and deer in the forest for food. When the pilgrims went into the forest to hunt, they made so much noise, the animals ran away. Squanto shook his head. He knew his people did not have these problems. They were taught to move without noise through the forest. The wild animals often did not know the hunters were there until it was too late. The Native American men showed the pilgrim men how to move quietly through the forest. They told the pilgrims the deer had a favorite place to drink water. This would be a good place for the pilgrims to hide to get venison or deer meat for food. Squanto taught the children where to find and pick wild berries to eat. In the fall, he showed them which nuts were good to eat and where to find them. Corn, squash, beans, and pumpkins were also harvested in the fall. Squanto gave a cooking lesson to the pilgrim women. He taught them how to make succotash by cooking corn and beans together with meat. Squanto also taught the women how to cook the other vegetables, like the pumpkins. They weren't familiar with those before. The pilgrims were not so hungry now, and the children grew stronger too. The pilgrims give thanks. The pilgrims had much to thank God for. They decided to have a feast of Thanksgiving. They knew it was only right to invite their faithful friends. Chief Massasoit and 90 of his men came to the pilgrims' feast, but they did not come empty-handed. They brought 5 deer to share. The first feast of Thanksgiving lasted 3 days. The pilgrims thanked God for his help and care. Top of the next page. God had been good to the pilgrims. I didn't say turn the page. Top of the next page. That's the same. Just top of the next page. God had been good to the pilgrims. In America, they were free to worship God as they wanted to worship him. Squanto was another special blessing from God. If Squanto had not come to help the pilgrims, they may not have lived through the second winter. William Bradford, the second governor of Plymouth, remember John Carver was the first? And now it's William Bradford. The second governor of Plymouth wrote about the settlement. He described Squanto as a special instrument sent of God for their good beyond their expectation. When the next winter came, the pilgrims' supply of food was not as much as they had hoped, but they lived in warm houses and had vegetables to eat. There were times when the pilgrims were hungry, but there was no starving time. God had led them to a new land of freedom, and God had provided for them through their Native American friends. On the page. All right.
Quakers.
Well, we're not going to read that though. You need to stop burning out. You know what? I didn't realize this new book doesn't tell why he also stayed with them. In our old book, it told us that another reason Squanto stayed with them, besides helping them and teaching them things, is because where the pilgrims settled in Plymouth was actually where his old tribe had lived.
Oh.
Since they went all over there and the pilgrims didn't know it, that's where they settled. So since they were where he used to live, that's another reason he stayed with them. I didn't realize the new book didn't say that. I'd forgotten that. All right, have you ever had something, we're on the top of the next page now, by the way. Have you ever had something happen to you which you thought was bad? Perhaps God meant it for good. Captain Hunt kidnapped Squanto. Of course, Captain Hunt was doing something evil, yet we can see the hand of God taking care of not only Squanto, because he lived and he didn't die like the rest of his tribe did, but also the pilgrims. In the Bible, we read in Genesis the story of Joseph and how his brothers sold him as a slave. That's evil, isn't it? His own brothers sold him as a slave, but many years later, Joseph saw God's goodness in something that his brothers had meant for evil. And there's actually a Bible verse, Genesis 50:20, that says just that. Joseph told his brothers that. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Because he used Joseph to save thousands of people from dying from a famine. How many of you remember that Bible story? All right. Answer these questions, please. What did Squanto learn in England? Yes?
A new language.
The English language, which is one way he was able to help the pilgrims. Does somebody else know another thing? It's almost like so easy because it's just too obvious. All right. What it is just how the English lived. Because did the English in England live the same way that he was used to?
No.
That they had houses and beds and lots of things that he wasn't even used to. What agreement did Chief Massasoit and Governor Carver make? What do you call that? Adam?
I forgot what it was, but
Alright, well I need somebody that could possibly remember and not have to look it up. If you find it before somebody remembers, Paige?
a peace treaty.
A peace treaty, very good. Everybody, what's it called? The agreement that the Chief Massasoit and Governor Carver made?
Peace treaty.
Everyone?
Peace treaty.
I need all of you answering. All of you are gonna be taking the test next week and the quiz. So you better be paying attention. What were two of the promises that they made in the peace treaty? They said what?
No harm to our
Very good. They would not harm each other.
who shall not steal. They won't steal each other's stuff.
Alright, they would not steal from each other.
And if another tribe attacked, they would help each
Yeah, they
other.
would help each other if somebody else attacked them. And one more that I can remember. Can you remember it?
Yeah.
What is it?
Bring guns and
Yeah. They would not bring their guns and their bows and arrows when they met together. Very good. You guys did great on that. Why did Squanto stay with the Pilgrims? And just go by what the book says. Don't go by what I just told you because I don't know why they took it out. But just go by what what we learned from the book.
to teach them new things.
Yeah, he wanted to teach them new ways to live that would help them. And let's talk about some of those new things he taught them. What are some of the things he taught them, Abby?
He taught them how to cook and
Very good. He taught them how to cook some of those vegetables they weren't familiar with.
Fish.
He taught them how to fish. Well, specifically, what did he teach them? Because they knew how to fish their way, but what did he help them to make so that they could fish?
Hooks and nets.
No, not hooks,
Nets.
just nets. He taught them how to make nets from the big tall grass. Jonathan?
they showed them how to make better plants by putting a fish in the plant.
Alright, so how to fertilize. He used how to use fish as fertilizer. That's the
How to
one
use
we're gonna
fish
say.
as
How to use fish as fertilizer?
To make maple syrup and sugar.
Yes, to make maple syrup and maple sugar. How many of you like maple syrup? It's not as popular down south where I'm from. We're big on cane syrup down there. But, I know it's very big up north and even down to this area. Did we talk about, that you taught the children how to find nuts and berries?
Yep.
Yeah, nuts and berries, that we missed that one. I think that's all of them. And what was the feast they held to celebrate God's goodness? Everybody